All right, good evening, folks, and welcome to our financial aid information session. We are excited to be able to present to you tonight a whole bunch of information that will help you with applying to aid, not only at Eastside Prep, but hopefully other schools as well, and give you a sense of what our philosophy is around financial aid at EPS. So we're excited to be able to share with you a whole lot of details. We're also excited to hear from you about the questions that you have regarding the aid process, regarding anything you're going to be completing online as far as financial aid forms. And so in order to help provide all that information to you, I'm going to introduce myself and give you an opportunity to meet my colleague, Mr. Casey Otley. So my name is Cheryl Miller. I am the Director of Enrollment Management at Eastside Prep. And I am in my third year at EPS. I've been in a combination of independent school and college admissions settings for about 15 years now. So when I came to EPS, I had the chance to join an amazing leadership team, our senior leadership team of folks who help to, do everything from provide direction to the biggest picture item at the school, all the way through the tiniest little detail. And one of the people who is most responsible for all of those tiny little details is my colleague, Mr. Casey Otley. So Casey, out there in Issaquah, how are you this evening, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, Cheryl. Thank you for the kind introduction.
And Casey, you came to EPS not from a background in schools, correct?
Nope, this is the first school that I have worked at, and I am now in my fourth academic year.
So applying for aid to independent schools was new to you as well when you joined EPS, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So, we've all learned together through this process, and I think one of the best ways that we've gotten to know how to help families is through going through the process ourselves. So we're going to be sharing with you a whole bunch of information that is actually from the site where you would be applying for need-based aid at Eastside Prep, and also going through a variety of different components of what our process is internally, and that varies a lot from school to school. So we're going to talk through that, and just to give you a sense of kind of how the rest of the evening is going to go. Again, financial aid philosophy, talking through the process. One thing that we'd love for you to do is, as you have questions, and certainly questions may already be in your mind, or they may be things that come up as you view the presentation, we invite you to add those into the Q&A. You will see within that Q&A window that there is an opportunity for you to ask questions, and you can do so anonymously. One thing that's really great about this online format is that you don't need to ask questions on behalf of your family. We are a school that does not anticipate knowing whether a family is going to need to receive need-based aid before their student is admitted or their students are admitted to Eastside Prep. And so in that spirit, we're really glad for you to be able to ask questions anonymously tonight, and you can get as granular as you want to. And if there's anything that we're unable to answer just based on the information we have available, then we can always follow up with you if you provide your contact information in that Q&A. That's only available to members of the admissions team and Casey and myself tonight. So just wanted to make sure that you are aware of that, that you can ask questions throughout. And also, just know that we will take as much time for questions as is needed. But if we're wrapped before that 7:30 point, we won't hold you any longer. But we will be able to publish this session for viewing after tonight. So we won't, if you do put your name in the chat, we won't add that into the video component of this. So any questions that you ask are anonymous, long story short. So let's go ahead and proceed. And I want to tell you a little bit about our financial aid philosophy at EPS. We really, as a school, so much of what we do is guided by our mission, which is known as TALLY for short, Think, Act, Lead, and Innovate. And the long version of that is think critically, act responsibly, lead compassionately, and innovate wisely. And when we think about responsible action and compassionate leadership, one of the most important ways that we exercise that is by providing more access to our school community and by working to increasingly make that school community as inclusive as possible. And so financial aid is a direct way that we are doing that. And really our goal is to ensure that we are offering the resources that are available to as many students as possible, as many families as possible, so that we're either eliminating or reducing the barriers that might exist in terms of them being able to attend independent schools. So, so if you're somebody who's thinking, I'm just not sure if we can afford independent school, even if we receive aid, or, I'm not sure what the out-of-pocket is going to look like for us, I'm really glad that you're here, because we definitely want to ensure that you have all the information that you need to know that EPS can be very affordable for a wide range of families with a wide variety of different financial pictures. We have been awarding more and more aid each year. It's part of our commitment to increase our financial aid budget by 0.5% of our tuition revenue each year to those resources, so that, again, we can offer more of that access to more families. And the average award at this time is $30,000 per student. So, really, we are very committed to this aid process, making sure that, at this point, about 1 in 10 of our students, but an increasing number from here, are going to be able to receive the resources that they need in order to attend EPS. So what does it cover? When we think about need-based aid, we're not just talking about tuition itself and the rough cost of tuition, but we are also talking about all of the things that tuition applies to. So tuition doesn't just apply to your classes at EPS. It also applies to co-curricular activities and extracurricular activities. That could be things like sports, participating in theater, getting involved in the debate team. There are a number of different ways that tuition dollars are used at Eastside Prep because there's so many vibrant aspects to how we function as a community, not just the classroom experience. So yes, tuition is covered. When we talk about how this coverage works, there's always going to be a percent of need that's met based on what a family qualifies for. So that could be 100% or anywhere down from there. But when we cover a percentage of need, let's say it's 50% of tuition that we're covering, we're also going to cover 50% of additional expenses as well. So that would be the laptop computer, and a student has a new one of those every 4 years. So if a student's joining us for upper school just in 9th grade, they'll just have 1 laptop purchase. If they were joining us in middle school and 5th or 6th grade, they'd have 2 laptop purchases during the time that they are enrolled at EPS. And again, 50% of the cost of that laptop will be covered. Same thing with books and course materials. So this year we've had a number of different kits going out to our students in remote for everything from their physical education supplies to lab supplies for science classes. And when all of those different components go out, we're really covering, the kits for all of the students in remote because those would usually be classroom-based materials. But when it comes to the books and things that are purchased through our bookstore that's available online, let's say it's, again, 50% of tuition, we're covering 50% of books. And same thing with transportation. If students take advantage of our bus transportation, we also will provide an ORCA card free of charge to students who are receiving need-based support. So all of those are the things that help to make the school program the fullest experience that it can be for students. So again, it's not just tuition that we're covering, but it's other expenses as well. So again, who should apply for aid? You're here this evening or you're watching this video, and we want you to know that you should be applying for aid if you have any concern about your ability to meet the financial commitment to EPS. We see that there is a wide range of family income levels and different family financial pictures that are eligible to receive qualifying and eligible to receive need-based aid. So it's not just a family at a certain income level or below that's eligible for aid at EPS. There really are a variety of different financial pictures. And likewise, we have a number of families that their financial situations may change during the course of enrollment at EPS. So we want to make sure that those families know that at any point in time, even if they haven't received aid prior, there is the opportunity to apply for need-based aid in the future. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Casey to talk a little bit about the process of applying for aid, what some of the different deadlines are and how that interfaces with our re-enrollment and our enrollment periods.
Great, thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah.
So the first step here, before you even apply for aid, is applying for admissions to EPS. You see the deadline there, January 14th of this coming year. And once you do that, then you can complete your financial aid application. You can do those in any order, actually, but you do not need to do the aid application before you do the admission, just for your information there. And then following years, the re-enrollment period comes in the January, February. And returning families get to do their financial aid applications in December, so a little bit earlier.
So if you have a sibling that's applying, you'll both want to go on that returning family deadline, right? You're going to get that returning family application in, even if you have a new sibling that's applying this year. Is that correct, Casey?
That is accurate.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to advance us on here. Once the old mouse appears, where did that mouse go, Casey? Disappeared as soon as you started talking.
I scared it away.
Scared it away. Here we go. All right.
Okay, just continuing on with the process here. So the applications for our new students, I just want to draw this one out, are reviewed after the admissions decisions have been made. So we like to call that need blind. Cheryl and I will be the first ones going through the 8 applications, but we don't even do that until Cheryl and the team have gone through and said, you know, these students are the right ones that we'd like to invite to join our community. So we do our best there to stay need blind on that. Mm-hmm. The offer and enrollment contract notification, as it's stated here, upper school comes first, so mid-February, February 19th this year. And then the middle school is about a month behind that. Well, exactly a month this year, isn't that? Mm-hmm. March 19th. And then financial aid applications for returning students. So just call this out a bit separately. We do review those for returning students as they come in. We don't make award decisions, but we expect those students to be back with us, so we get a head start on those. Anything else to add to that on Cheryl?
No, I think it's really just very helpful for folks to know that we're not going to evaluate aid until after we've assessed for admission. And so admissions committee members that include members of our faculty and other administrators are not aware of a family's level of financial need at the point that we're making admissions decisions. And I think that's just a really important part for everyone to be aware of. So how will you get to that application? So what you're going to do is go to the admissions page. You can find the tuition and fees and financial aid links there. And that will allow you to access what's called Solutions by SSS. That is the website that's going to be the conduit for all the information that you're going to see in terms of financial aid, the application itself, and you'll also find some other resources there. So when you look at the SSS resources that are available online, you will see that really the same application can be used for a variety of different independent schools, not just EPS, but other schools as well. The other thing that you're going to want to know when looking at those, when beginning the process itself, is that if parents reside in separate households, you're going to want to make sure that each parent completes, creates their own account and completes their own PFS. So it's going to be important for them to have their own information, and you can find more details about that and a whole lot of other big picture things with regards to the aid process on this Family Resource Center. So this is what it will look like when you click the link that's available on the EPS website, and you'll see that in the top right hand corner, that's where you're going to log in to complete or update your PFS, and that stands for Parent Financial Statement. So so that Family Resource Center is going to be great. There's tons of support and help there, and that's a great space for you to not only get the information that you're going to need in applying for aid to EPS, but also if you're applying to other schools as well. So once you get to that login page, it's going to look just a little bit different. You're going to see that area where you're going to use your username and password. If you have any problems with that username and password along the way, we encourage you to contact SSS because we don't have access to any of those login credentials directly because this is a third party that we're working with. So what is it going to look like when they are inside there, Casey? I'm seeing a big menu full of a lot of options. So what is the navigation experience like once they start completing the Parent Financial Statement?
Yeah, so once you get in there completing it, you will see your screen will look just like it does on the left side of my screen here. It'll help you kind of keep an idea of where you are in the process and what areas you still need to complete. You can hop around between any of these at any time, and you can come back and revisit them at any point. Also, this is just kind of a nice way to keep track of where you are, and perhaps perhaps you have information to be able to complete one of these sections easier tonight than others, and you can come back to the others.
That's great. And also, one of the things I'm noticing here is that much like in Ravenna, the application system that you're used to using, when you are complete with a section, you will see that lovely green check mark. So that nice affirming green check mark is a thing that is in common between Ravenna and the PFS. I don't know if they changed that after Community Brands, the parent company of both of these products, took over the SSS, but I do think it is a nice symmetry between the two products that are there. So Casey also has some tips and tricks as you are starting to fill out this PFS, and just be aware of, you know, sort of what goes on which page and which goes on another page.
Yeah, so I took the opportunity last week to go through and do an application myself to remind myself, you know, of how the process and how the flow works. So there's a couple areas that I think the biggest trick that I would say is make sure you enter the information in one place, one section only. It's not always super obvious the first time through, but you can pop back and adjust. A couple things here that I called out that I have seen in past years applications that get a little tricky. So mortgage debt, there's a section on real estate. You'd be able to talk about home, whether you own it or not, and mortgage debt would go along with that. Other sorts of debt, there's another section called other assets and debt section. One of the other partner here is if you own a business, so you can have two sources of income. You can be paying yourself a salary on a regular basis, and then you may have income from the profits of the business at the end of the year. Those are drawn out into two different places. So just want to bring that out here, that the W-2 will be just that, and then profits from the business get accounted for elsewhere. And then the last bullet here is one of the things that you'll get to fill out is a monthly income and expense. It gives us an idea of just what a month looks like in your household. Some of these things you don't pay on a monthly basis, so you may go, oh, geez, I don't really know. I don't think about it that often. So just take your time, go back, look at a bank statement, something like that. And if it's something you pay once a year, like perhaps a property tax, divide it by 12 and put that number in there, just to give us a sense of what an average month looks like.
Okay, cool. So if I've got one of those kind of one-time expenses that's paid once in the year, but it is something that is going to be part of the overall financial picture, it sounds like I should be planning to divide that by 12 and have that represented kind of throughout each month, so that it gives that overall picture of what an average month looks like.
You got it.
Okay, cool. So then when they're getting in the form, kind of how do they let us know that they're applying to EPS, or that maybe they have other students that are applying to other schools at the same time? How does that work? Yeah, so this page and a number of these pages I'm going through may not make a whole lot of sense right now unless you've already been in there, but just wanted to give you some ideas of some of the sections here that you can certainly refer back to this when you do start to go through it here. So you can see here where we are on section 5, select schools. So on the top there, you can go in and you can plug in the name of the school. It just so happens in this case, I plugged in Eastside Preparatory School, and that's what came up. You can see below there in the middle of this, there's a number of other schools that happen to populate into there being local schools. Down at the very bottom, I can then go in and say, all right, for student A, my little Johnny, I want him to apply to Eastside Prep in these other 3 schools. And I can go through that right there. If I have a second student that is also applying for aid, little Susie, we'll say, we can go through and pick Eastside Prep and perhaps 3 different schools that her brother did not apply to. So you can do that all on this one page, which is really nice. It makes it easy for you, the family, and this information is going to not only Eastside Prep, but any other schools that you select here. Okay, great. And if folks wanted to look us up by code, that's going to be 3665, just like the number of days in the year. Just add another 6 in there between the 3 and the 6. I don't know any other way to remember that. That's the only way I could remember it. But pretty easy to select your schools in a variety of different ways. What is pre-screening all about? Well, how is that going to help families as they're going through the process, Casey? Yeah, so kind of the after you've gone through and done school selection, then it starts to get into the financial part of the application. And they'll do this pre-screening here, and you'll see there's 4 questions. Some of it income-based, asset-based, as well as whether you own your own business. This just allows
the system to modify a little bit what you are being asked for. So if your household income is below the amount that's listed here, you might have a slightly shortened version of this application. Mm-hmm. If you own a business or multiple businesses, you will get additional sections. So this is an opportunity here just to kind of craft what's going to come at you in the following pages.
Okay, so it sounds pretty similar to if I was filing my taxes online, say, and I let it know whether I had dependents or owned a business or received interest income in that year. That would be the type of thing that it would kind of do a pre-assessment on to know which sorts of schedules I would need to file taxes on. It sounds like this is really similar to that.
Exactly.
Okay. So looking at these additional expenses, it sounds like, you know, there might be some confusion potentially for folks in terms of where they should be entering some of these additional expenses.
Yeah, so you'll see here in my presentation, I'm pretty consistent here that I'm just sending out reminders to enter expenses in only one section. And you'll see here, I highlighted something down on the bottom that even within the system, it'll remind you that, hey, don't put things in this section and add it in another place. It only goes in one place. So I call it out here. This is one of those areas, additional expenses. It's not super obvious without having gone through the entire application to know, should I put it here or somewhere else? And it could be that you go through and you put it in on this page and you get 2 pages further in and say, all right, let's pop back. Casey told me not to enter it twice. I'm gonna go take it out of that other page and put it into this page. So just a reminder there on the expense side of things.
And just picture that little Casey on your shoulder while you're filling things out.
Really scary.
Okay, don't picture that then. Let's talk a little bit about real estate and you know, just the mortgage debt. Again, one section only there.
One section only. So this is another area that I see some confusion when applicants I've seen in the past. So real estate, I talked about this up front. This is just what the page actually looks like. You identify that you either own or rent. If you own, then it will ask you information about your home. Part of that will be your mortgage debt. Further down in this part of the application, it'll ask you about other debt. That other debt could be consumer debt, things like that. So just keeping that when you get down to that other debt, just make sure that you recognize that you've already entered your mortgage in there, and you don't want to double count that one.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, you know, one of the things you mentioned, Casey, is, you know, one of the things you see. It sounds like you're able to really see kind of number by number what folks have entered in these forms. And we'll talk a little bit about, you know, sort of what our review process entails if folks have questions about that. But it sounds like we do a really thorough comb through kind of all the data that's provided there, so that, you know, naturally as human beings, we're bound to make, you know, some sort of error here or there, especially if you're going through this for the first time. So just know that, you know, Casey and you know, along with him, those who evaluate the financial aid, we have the ability to not, you know, we're not all looking at granular at these numbers. Really, Casey is the one who's helping mostly with that kind of specific part of the evaluation. But there is that level of awareness of detail. Would you say that's correct, Casey?
Yeah, that is correct. There's certainly there's a lot of detail here, and I've seen enough of them now to kind of be able to identify, okay, I think this wasn't meant to be entered that way, and we'll reach back out to families as needed. So don't feel like it's the end of the world if you if you feel like you might have made a mistake, or reach out and ask us.
Yeah, ask questions. You're human. We're human. We're here to help. So they've gone through, they've filled out all these different forms, they've gotten all those green check marks, which is so great. What do they do next? So
once they do that, then they have to pay the application fee, and it's a one-time application fee, and then hit the button that says submit the application. It is at that point that you'll be allowed to upload the required documents. So mainly tax documents that are required, but you won't be able to actually upload those until you have submitted the applications. But don't worry, you can always come back and make changes once it's been submitted. So it's not final until each of the individual schools says it's final, which is plenty far down the road. So don't worry about it not being perfect when you do that. It may be easier to hit submit and start uploading some of your documents, frankly, even before you've completed everything that you want to complete.
Okay, that's good to know. And Casey, what should I do if I get to the part where it says that I need a payment and that's something that I don't feel like I can afford out of pocket right now? Who should I contact?
Yeah, so there's two things about it. One, SSS will evaluate it based on some of that pre-screening information and may just pass it on through, may just let you hit submit and go on through. If it does not, if that's not the case, and the application fee is an impediment to applying to ourselves, reach out to Cheryl or myself and we'll get that taken care of.
Yep, we are more than happy to help with that. So, so if you do have questions about that, again, it's going to be determined by the financial information in the form. But if there is any sort of hardship there, don't hesitate to reach out. So I'm going to have questions as I go through this because I'm not going to have little Casey on my shoulder. I'm not even going to think about that because it's creepy, right? So what are the resources that I'm going to have to use as I go through some of the questions that I have? Yeah,
so there's plenty of things when you look across the top bar while you're filling out your PFS there. Hit help, jump in there, and there's all kinds of FAQs. Frequently asked questions, answers to frequently asked questions. There's tutorials, there's all kinds of information that you can go in and look at on your own. You can also reach out to the folks at SSS if it's something specific about the application or some troubles you're having perhaps with the technology of theirs. They are very helpful. I call them multiple times a year to have them help me with things.
They're good folks.
Yes, they are.
So again, just to refresh, tech, we're going to have the PFS interface itself, the login information, anything pertaining to, just kind of the technical side of utilizing the website. Maybe you're experiencing problems with your web browser and, how it's working with the system. That's when you're going to want to contact SSS, and you can reach them by phone or email. Their information's all over the site where you will complete the parent financial statement. If you have questions about the number, so if it's anything pertaining to, kind of what do I plug in here? Does this belong there? Or, these forms, like, does EPS need that? You'll get the list in there, but if you have questions about that, definitely contact Casey. You can email him. That's a great way to get in touch. And then if you have those questions, again, as Casey mentioned about, anything pertaining to admission, enrollment, re-enrollment, if you are looking for fee waivers for any of these components, please contact me. Emailing me is a great way to be in touch, and I'm more than happy to help out with that. So, so with that said, we'll leave this content up so you can write down our email addresses if you haven't had a chance to do so already. But what sorts of questions folks have? I know we've got a couple in there. One of the things is, does EPS get information about other schools my kid is applying to? So will we be able to see which other schools a student is applying to?
So in the financial aid process, yes. So behind the scene, when you fill this out, I do see what other schools that students are applying to.
Yeah, and again,
I don't know that you see that, Cheryl, beforehand during the admissions process.
I don't see that. We don't look at that beforehand, and it's important to know that, again, that is not information that would be incorporated into an admissions decision. So if you were to only select EPS, or if you were to have 5 different schools on there, we wouldn't change our admissions decision. What will happen in the group process of admissions committee on the basis of the information that you see there. So I know that that's, especially if you filled out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid for colleges, that, like there's going to be a whole list of schools that's available there. So I think that's a very natural and understandable question. But yeah, that is something that is available, but that's not something that we'll consider in terms of whether or not we're offering admission or whether or not a student qualifies for aid. So glad you asked that. Another question that came through, I may have missed this. Do we need to have 2020 taxes filed by the February deadline? So Casey, can you talk about which tax information we use, which years of information families are going to need to submit documentation for, and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question, and thank you for asking that. So no, you will not have to have your 2020 tax return done by then. If you do, fantastic. If not, what you're going to do is you're going to turn in your 2019 tax return and perhaps even use that to complete the application. You'll do that, and then you'll do two things. One, you'll be making an estimate of your 2020 income and expenses while you're going through the process. And then once you file your 2020 tax return, then you can come back and add that into your application.
Okay, so I won't need that to be filed at the, if it's January 1 and I'm not ready to file my taxes, but, let's say I know my child's admissions deadline is right around the corner, I don't have to have gotten my 2020 taxes done in order to apply for aid from EPS.
Correct. Yeah, 2019 tax return will work just fine. And if you've gotten your W-2 from your employer, that's good because it will show your income for 2020 before getting there. If you don't have that, even a recent pay stub, those would only be necessary if there's a difference, it's just a significant difference, a meaningful difference between 2019 and what you know to have already happened in 2020, but have not completed the tax return.
So that's a great question, Casey. Like if I've gone through a big financial shift this year, let's say that, either I went on to unemployment or maybe my hours were reduced because of, things related to COVID and the circumstances that we're in right now. So I know that my 2019 taxes are going to look really, really different from my 2020 taxes. Where's the spot in the PFS that I should include that information? Like, how should I make sure that EPS knows that big picture of the major financial shifts that our families experienced?
Yeah, so there's two opportunities there. One is just entering the estimated information in for 2020. So call that just the numbers. There's also a number of places within the PFS where you have the opportunity to, what I say is tell your story. So provide a little bit of the explanation behind some of the information that you've input into the system. So Cheryl, what you just explained there as an example would be exactly what you write out there. I read all that information to understand the picture better, to make sense behind what I'm seeing in some of the numbers.
Great. So it sounds like, we have the ability to use a lot of professional judgment when it comes to reviewing the applications and just having an awareness of, again, there's numbers that you're plugging in, but there's also human stories and experiences behind that. So really, it sounds like there's spaces within the form where families can let us know the as much detail as they're really able to and want to regarding their individual circumstances.
That is correct.
Great. So Casey, another question that I would have for you would be, I feel like I'm not going to be able to get the financial aid form completed before the deadline, or, maybe I'm just getting information about Eastside Prep and my opportunity, well after that deadline has passed. What should I do? How should I proceed then?
My recommendation there would be to reach out to Cheryl to start with, and Cheryl will then loop me in when appropriate. We don't necessarily have we have deadlines that allows us to kind of put a stop and say, all right, we're going to move forward from there. But Cheryl and I and EPS, we don't not listen to people when things come along. So there is an opportunity to continue the dialogue with us.
Appreciate that, Casey. So, I was mentioning circumstances that families have faced as a result of COVID that might have affected things like employment, for example, or number of hours worked. One family is sharing with us, and we're very sorry to hear this, that this year they had a major death in the family. So sorry for your loss. They note that they received some insurance proceeds, but this is a very unusual set of proceeds. This is not part of their regular income. So how is something like this going to be captured? Maybe we've got, for example, insurance proceeds that come through some sort of gift that or inheritance, or maybe something like, a distribution from a retirement account. We know that some families might have students who are still in school while they have retirement age, folks that are the qualifying income earners at home. So how would that work, Casey, if we've got something like an unusual sort of windfall of insurance money, for example?
Another example is the sale of a home. I see that one. And unfortunately, I have seen this situation before that's being asked in this question. So it's the same thing. It's telling the story to the extent that you're comfortable doing. The numbers are one thing, because if 2000, we're going to say you haven't done 2020 yet. So if you're turning in the 2019 tax return and there's a much larger income there than there normally would be, your estimate for 2020 is your opportunity to, in numbers, tell that story, and then in words, tell the story elsewhere. Because otherwise I will come back and ask the question to say, those numbers are very different. But there is an opportunity in those two ways also to tell that story.
So it sounds like if there is something that is really exceptional or unusual, or numbers that are going to be quite different than maybe the overall financial picture that's appearing in the application, that it would be better for, let's say I'm a family that's applying for aid, it would be better for me to take the opportunity to write and share information about that than to, just put that out there and see what you make of it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, if there's something unique, certainly I prefer to know to the extent that you are comfortable sharing, and share what you want. Let me know that you want to reach out and talk about it if you don't want to put all of it in writing, but certainly that'll help me understand the story once again behind the numbers that are there.
Great. Casey, so let's talk a little bit about households or students that have multiple households. Maybe we've got a parent that is claiming the child as a dependent on their taxes, another parent that doesn't, but they are also responsible in part for educational decision making or educational expenses. How is that going to work in terms of having a couple of different parent financial statements that are coming in for one child? Is the other family going to potentially see my financial information, or kind of what will be shared from family to family, and how does that all come together as EPS is making a decision about that student's aid?
Yep, great question. So as you mentioned earlier, Cheryl, each parent, each household would complete an application. Those behind the scenes with SSS get merged together so that when we see it on our end, we're looking at one application. The other account, the other applicant, the other parent, the other household, you do not see each other's. Those are completely separated, and that's why it's done that way. We get to see that on the back end when SSS pulls this together for us.
Okay, so EPS is going to see a consolidated view, but each individual household is only going to be able to access and see their own financial information.
You got it.
Okay, and then I guess another component of that would be, let's say we enroll at EPS and our students attending. Like how are we each, if we each have a component that we're responsible for paying toward their tuition and other expenses, how is that going to work from a billing perspective, or what do we need to coordinate together? How does that work?
Yeah, so we, my team in the business office will end up separating it out into two separate bills, depending on the percentages that the families have agreed upon to be paid by each party. So those get separated out on the billing side also. Okay,
great. So even on that front, I'm not going to have to, necessarily coordinate with my former spouse on where the dollars and cents are coming from. I just need to worry about my portion.
That is correct.
Okay. Who will be responsible for tuition though? Like who will be liable for the portion of tuition that we have to pay? Is it both of us? Is it one of us?
Ultimately, both parents are going to sign the contract, and perhaps you can speak to that, Cheryl, better than I can, but both parents will sign the contract and therefore be obligated for the tuition at EPS. Cheryl, I don't know, maybe you can provide a little more color on that.
Yeah, to my own hypothetical question. So the idea would be that yes, every family is going to have an account that they would use to sign the enrollment contract and sign off on the financial aid paperwork. So that's something that each household will have access to and see their own versions of, sign their own versions of. So each family is fully liable for 100% of tuition liability after June 1st. That's our cutoff date. So for families receiving financial aid, that's whatever portion is not covered by need-based support that you would be fully liable for. So let's say my portion that I have is, $3,000 a year, and maybe my former spouse's or my child's parents is $2,000 a year. That's we're going to be fully liable, each of us, for 100% of tuition, but we will only be billed for the portion of it that is determined based on the financial aid application, as well as any sort of split billing arrangement that we might have based on, for example, a parenting agreement. So we are out of questions right now. Casey, is there anything else that's percolated for you, tips or tricks or, just general things that you feel like folks should know about our process?
Yeah, so I'd say two things come to mind. One that was, I'll say, a related question to what you asked previously, Cheryl. Circumstances can change not only year to year, but can also change within a year. So Cheryl and I like to think, are pretty open to listening to families if something comes up during the year. So just know that's always an opportunity also. The one other question that I get sometimes, Cheryl, is how long is this going to take me to do?
That's a great question.
Having just gone through it last week, and me knowing it better than others, but also probably reading every detail more than others, an hour to two is what I would say. Mm-hmm. When you have all the the necessary documents in front of you, your tax return, once again, perhaps your W-2, perhaps a pay stub, a bank statement to help you estimate your monthly expenses, your mortgage statement if you don't know how much is left on your mortgage, those types of things.
Great. So it sounds like it's probably going to take me less time than it took me to do my taxes, but more time than it would take me to do some online shopping. Is that correct?
Depends on how much you shop.
I don't know. I mean, in these times, you could be getting everything from toilet paper to groceries to your holiday gifts online. So could be quite a bit of time. So, but less time than it takes to do your taxes.
Absolutely.
There. Okay,
yes.
Good. Well, I appreciate that, Casey. I guess one other thing that I would add is, again, as you mentioned, we really want to hear from families when there are things that they're having questions about or they're having needs on. And one thing that came up this year, we knew that we needed to provide our resources in a different way as a result of going remote for school for a period of time. So, for example, students who are receiving lunch support are receiving that in the form of grocery gift cards right now. Students also receive some support with things like some tech peripherals, like a separate keyboard or a mouse or a second screen that we knew would be really important features of them having a great online learning experience, but wouldn't necessarily be able to be provided by the family at home. So those are the types of things that we've been assisting with during, these past, gosh, it's coming up on a year now, Casey, but it hasn't quite been a year yet. In addition to reevaluating some aid for families whose circumstances have changed, small business owners or folks whose hours were reduced at work. So we know that again, this is such an exceptional set of circumstances that folks are in right now that there are necessarily going to be financial pieces that have shifted as a result of that. So we just want to be humans, hearing from other humans about how we can help and support, because it's really our goal, especially for families that we've already made the commitment to support them as Eastside Prep families, that we continue to do that in the ways that they need during this variety of circumstances that they'll face over the years, not just global pandemic years, but other years as well. So with that, if we don't have any other, we'll wait just a couple more moments to see if we have other questions that filter in from the attendees. Again, you've got our contact information here, so feel free to be in touch. As you're going through the aid application, just know that you can be working on things. It will save online, and you don't need to be completing that all in one fell swoop. So if you don't have, that uninterrupted hour or two, maybe this is something you're taking care of after bedtime for the kids, or on the weekends or something like that. We know interruptions happen, so just know that as you're completing it, you do have the ability to log back in. Make sure you put that password somewhere. Everyone has different password management techniques, but just make sure it's going to be a complicated password. Make sure you put it somewhere in your brain, in your password vault, in your special notebook, that you're going to be able to recall it, because again, we won't be able to help out with that. You will have to contact SSS if you lose that password or need things reset. So just encourage folks to choose passwords wisely, maintain them wisely, but also hold on to them in a way that works for them. So yeah. Casey, any good jokes or other humor that you want to throw out while we wait for potentially some other questions to roll in?
Cheryl, you know the jokes aren't my great strength.
You know, it's too bad because I feel like we might have somebody who's just been here driving behind the scenes, being our event producer, who might have some good jokes out there. I'm wondering if Miss Katie Nickel, admissions experience coordinator, would just have a joke from behind the scenes that she would be willing to contribute for the good of the whole while we wait, in case there are other questions. Katie Nickel, what do you think?
Hi, everyone. I mean, one of my recent go-tos that maybe Casey doesn't know, I know Cheryl knows the answer to this one, but maybe Casey doesn't. Why did the golfer bring 2 pairs of pants?
Did the golfer bring 2 pairs of pants? So I'm trying to come up with an answer and picturing Mr. Gumry at the same time.
Mr. Gumry, our Associate Head of School for College Counseling and Alumni Relations.
Why did
Yes.
Bart bring a second pair of pants?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to that.
Casey, it's because he got a hole in one.
But and look, my joke was so terrible, we got a new question.
Oh, I'm so relieved. So yes, the budget for this year's financial aid. Casey, can you talk a little bit more about kind of our financial aid budget, what the amount of that is, how it gets distributed? We did cover this in the beginning, but want to make sure that everyone has access to that information.
Yeah, so at the start of the year, actually, we're just doing that now for next school year. We go through and with our board, we look at the total tuition revenues we're going to have, and we pick a percentage. And as Cheryl said earlier, we're growing that percentage as we become a more established school. We have the ability to ratchet up the percentage and thus the dollar of aid that we're able to provide. So this coming year, it'll be around $1.6 million. So for 2021, 2022 in total. And I think, as you said, we support about 10% of a student body gets some part of aid.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Casey. Got another question as well. How is aid affected when there are multiple kids in different private schools or colleges? So we know that a lot of times families are not just paying tuition to one institution, but oftentimes multiple institutions. So how does that work from the aid application process? Or not just the application, but kind of how will that affect the dollars that a family might qualify for?
Yeah, so during the aid application, you'll have the opportunity to talk about each of the siblings, each of the kids in there, and you can it will ask what school to go to, and whether what the tuition is that's being paid, whether it be another independent school, college, daycare for that matter. So it'll ask that information. In the end, what it will do is it will come back and say a couple drivers are how many members are in the family and how many students are going to tuition paying schools. So that will take into account all of those that I mentioned, other independent schools, colleges, and won't necessarily look at exactly which schools or colleges those are, but it will recognize that a family has an amount of money that can be allocated to school, and it needs to be shared amongst the family members.
Speaking of the amount of money that a family might have to allocate to different things, does EPS take into account cost of living, which is, as we know, in the Seattle area, very different than other parts of the country? Or is this the formula that we use or the formula that SSS uses to determine aid eligibility the same from kind of state to state, area to area?
So in terms of how SSS calculates it, it uses the same process, looking at the numbers. What we then do at EPS, and perhaps other schools do also, I do not know. We look at Seattle, we look at the cost of living in Seattle and recognize that it's a little bit different than where it might be somewhere in the middle of the country. And if you're from the middle of the country, that's good. So we do apply a cost of living adjustment for the Seattle market.
Great. All right. So Katie, did you prep any other great jokes? We're gonna give one more kind of joke round of opportunity before we before we depart, so that if there are any last questions, folks have an opportunity to answer them. But Ms. Nickel, did you source anything else while we were back in question mode?
Oh yeah, of course I did. Hey Casey, what did you think of that new diner on the moon?
What did I think of that new diner on the moon?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I think you're going to tell me.
I am. The food was good, but it was really kind of lacking atmosphere.
Oh, Katie Nickel.
I know. I've got one more for you.
Okay.
To see if we can stir up any questions here. Casey, what do you call a boomerang that won't come back?
A stick?
You got it! Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you.
I got one?
You got one!
You can tell Casey's our numbers guy, because the one where he was just like, oh, if it's not a boomerang, it doesn't come back, it's a stick. Casey, thank you for all of the wisdom that you brought, not only to the punchline of that joke, but all of our understanding of the parent financial statement, how we apply for aid, and what are some of the things that we need to know about that. And again, if you have other things that you want to know about that we haven't covered tonight, do encourage you to reach out, and we're very, very happy to help in any ways that we can. And we really see the aid process as just one of those very early moments with families of getting to know them and getting to know how we can support their student and their whole family. So we really encourage you to reach out and just connect with us as you go through both the admissions and the financial aid process. We are more than happy to help. So I want to give a round of applause for Katie Nickel, Admissions Experience Coordinator, for producing tonight's event and bringing that excellent joke energy. And I will clarify, just because we had one question come in right before we were about to go. I knew this would happen, and I really appreciate y'all reaching out with the questions. The admissions process and the financial aid process, yes, they are separated from one another. So the admissions deadline is going to be January 14th, and then it will not be until early February that the financial aid application itself will be due. And we are going to look at the financial aid application separately from the admissions application. So our admissions committee members do not know who is applying for aid. They don't even see a little box that says, applying for aid or anything like that in the application form that they view. So we'll make those decisions after the point that the admissions committee members have made recommendations of who is going to be admitted to Eastside Prep and who we're going to make admissions offers to, enrollment offers to, I should say. So totally separate process. Fun fact though, the parent company for Ravenna, the application system, and SSS is the same community brands. So you'll have the same satisfying green check marks as you go through the application process and complete different components of it. So anything you would add to that, Casey?
Just that, just the one little part is that I don't even begin looking at financial aid applications until you tell me the students that we want to invite to join the community.
That's true, because it's a time resource thing, but also it's a need blindness thing.
Yep.
So very happy to clarify that. Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you to Katie Nickel for producing our event today and doing a great job with that. Thank you to Casey Otley for being such a wonderful colleague and for providing all this information about aid. And thank you to you all for providing the questions that are on your minds. We look forward to hearing more questions as you go through the process, and we know that those will pop up as you get into that PFS form. So don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be happy to hear from you. And we hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.